Welcome into the Hot Read Podcast live here on Tuesday, April the 1st. I am your host, JT Ruhnke, writer and reporter here at 440 Sports Podcast Network. You can follow me on Twitter, X, whatever you like to call it, at JT_Ruhnke. And back here in Nashville after a weekend away at a wedding with my lovely co-host, Stoney, Keeley, editor-in-chief of the M.L.Rose Network, one half of Football and Other F Words, and co-writer over at stackingtheinbox.com. I almost forgot to, I stopped speaking there for a second. I almost forgot how to talk there. But Stoney, how are you doing, my friend? On the first month, we are officially have made it to draft month, which is exciting, but also the grind continues. It gets even tougher and tougher from here.
I'm exhausted right now. We are at the home stretch of the Stacking the Inbox draft guide. If you guys could see my desk right now, I have three spiral notebooks. I've got my notepad. You can see I was watching some Robert Longerbeam before we hopped on the call. And then I have just all these random sheets of paper with notes all over them from watching tape. It's all I've been doing for the last 4 days, including an 8-hour run on Saturday where I literally just sat down at my desk and only got up to pee and pour myself another beer for 8 hours until 1 o'clock in the morning. My eyes were starting to cross and I was getting players wrong. I was like, I got to shut it down because I don't even know if this stuff's right. And then I did it all again on Sunday. So we're struggling right now, but we're getting through because, like Kenneth said, we made it to draft month. We are here.
We did indeed make it to draft month. Excited to be here with all of you and excited to be here with our sponsors of today's show and every show, M.L.Rose, 7 locations in Capitol View, Franklin, Gallatin, Melrose 8th Avenue, Mount Juliet, Sylvan Park, and a 8th one coming soon to Inglewood in East Nashville. I know that they got their signs and everything coming up. And, Stoney, you might need to reward yourself after a couple of those with one of the 25 beers on tap that M.L.Rose has or anything on their menu. Thank you to M.L.Rose for sponsoring the show. And, of course, Sinkers Beverages as well. Thank you to them for sponsoring the show. More on them later. Good to see you all here with us as well. Eddie saying, good evening, lads. Kenneth, yes, we made it to draft month. Derek saying Cam Ward will be a Titan soon. Joe saying party people proceed. Ross saying draft season is way too long. Actually, I get it, right? It is long, but I don't, I don't take it lightly for a second, because if draft season is long, we get to after draft season, and that gets even longer. And so I'm okay with where we are right now, even if it does seem long. I'd rather be here than in the months of June and July, the dog days of summer before we get back to football. Joe saying, that's what she said. My wife just said that, Ross. D Good saying, you guys should do a worst possible scenario mock. Good. You know what? I'll put that on the docket. That's a good one. Joe saying worst possible is stick and pick Abdul, and he's hurt. Drew saying real one's falling asleep watching day 3 edge tape. I knocked out mid jaw joiner versus USC the other night. Good to see. Thank you guys for being here with us. And before we get into my mock draft 2.0, the first mock draft of April, and my post free agency mock draft, I did promise that we would have some updates on our draft day and draft weekend festivities for you all today. And I'm happy to announce that we do have plans now in place. The Hot Read Podcast boys will be joining a football show Thursday night watch party special event benefiting the charity of choice. I believe it's the same one as last year with Shotgun Willie's Barbecue Catering over at Sinkers Beverages headquarters. Going to be so much fun reacting to the Titans' first overall pick, getting to hang out with fellow Titans fans, and then we will also be live for the entirety of the first round at Sinkers Beverages HQ, eating, drinking, having fun with you guys while we are live talking through the entire rest of the first round. That is on Thursday night. Tickets for that are in the link below, $30 for that one. And then Saturday, after the draft is over, there is another special event, draft night event on Saturday, catered by Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. A 5-flight bourbon tasting provided by Sinkers Beverages as well. And if you come to that one after the draft is over, after we've all talked to the Titans, the personnel, the coaches, the GMs, all the new players, we will be having a off the record special podcast Q&A session with myself, Stoney, Braden, Nick Suss, Paul Kaharski, all the boys from the 440 Sports Network, where we just get to talk back and forth with all of you guys about the draft, what we've heard, a lot of different things off the record, and including some special guests that we can maybe announce soon. That ticket is also in the link below. The first night will be $30. Second night on Saturday will be $50. If you buy both of them, it'll be $80 or $70. So you save about $10 on that if you buy them together. Can't wait to see you guys all there. Once again, it's all benefiting charity, food and drink catered by Shotgun Willie's Barbecue and Sinkers Beverages. What else could you ask for while watching so the NFL draft and getting to hear our takes on it live there in Nashville? It's going to be a great time, Stoney, and I'm super excited. We have more info on what we're doing on Friday coming soon, but for right now, Thursday and Saturday, those are our two biggest events for draft season, and we are excited to get to the end of draft month and be there hanging out with all of you.
Man, let me tell you something about those Sinkers guys. They know their stuff when it comes to the bourbon. They did a little bourbon tasting last year, and if it's anything like that, well worth the ticket price. It was some good stuff.
Yes, exactly. Coach Will says, real question, is this live or will I be bamboozled again like Friday? Yeah, and then also the Jaquan Jackson pick was legendary last year. A lot of good content coming for you guys as well here.
I rewatched that recently, JT, and it's funny like what that probably says about us as people. Like the reaction, just everybody was deflated, and then I immediately like go into spin mode where I'm just like citing off my scouting report. Like, well, he does this well. Like, oh my God, it's such an iconic clip. And
yeah, it's so great. We'll be off our rocker for that one, I'm sure, once again, and it'll be super exciting. But those two events, Thursday night and Saturday night, all the proceeds for your tickets go to the Our Kids Foundation. We're doing this for the kids, and so come out, eat, drink, and talk football, react to the Titans and the rest of the first round of the draft. And then on Saturday, talk specific Titans off the record with ourselves as well. Supporting the kids, Our Kids Foundation. More on that. We'll get more and more details as we go. D Good saying, can you guys do a day 3 with Easton, Zach, Stoney, and yourself again? Not putting that out of the question. There may be something in the works. Stay tuned, because I don't know if anything has been officially said, but I can promise that is on the way. So it's going to be an exciting time. And Drew also talking about Fridays. Getting sniped by pre-recorded JT about Braden Swinson was crazy. I saw some of you guys in the chat there as well on Friday. Good to see you guys. However, we can now get into, with all that stuff out of the way, all that stuff, we can get into my mock draft 2.0. And so, I don't like to do like weekly mock drafts. I feel like there's like 3 good times. There's a post-combine mock draft. Mm-hmm. There's a post-free agency mock draft, and then there's the final one. I never want to do more than 3, right? Because we learned a lot about what the Titans may be thinking after the combine. We've learned a lot about what the Titans may be thinking after being at pro days and how they acted in free agency, which gives us a good spot. And then finally, we get another month of hearing all the rumors and whatnot over the next month, doing our final, tape studies or our deep dives, getting all of our content ready for our shows on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, so that we can just talk ball to you guys for 15 hours straight on those 3 days. So, excited to do all that, but then that is when we, that final mock will be what I truly think the Titans do. But for right now, we're at the post free agency mock. So this one includes, a lot of different players looking at maybe a different perspective of where the Titans could potentially go in this draft, meddling around with trade down versus to not trade down at 35, also looking at other positions of need that the Titans could possibly go with. And a lot of good stuff about how the Titans releases or the additions affect what they may do. And so without further ado, Stoney, we can get underway. And with the first pick in the 2025 NFL draft, I have the Tennessee Titans selecting Shedeur Sanders, quarterback out of Colorado. This is quite a bit of a surprise to a lot of people here, maybe because we've been talking about so much about Cam Ward and just kidding, guys. April Fools. Sorry, guys. Tillman saying, bruh. Coach Will saying, you sick bastard. Joe saying, the GOAT. Had to lead you on there. Happy April Fools, April 1st to everyone there. But no, I do still have the Tennessee Titans selecting Cam Ward here with the first overall pick. As much as it would be fun to shake it up, everything we heard from this weekend at the NFL owners meetings, everything we've heard, Coach Callahan, Mike Borgonzi, Chad Brinker, still seems to point towards the direction of it's Cam, right? This is a team that I think when you talk about how many were at this pro day, having that second meeting with all of them being down in Miami, by the way, it wasn't in Nashville, it was in Miami. The special workout, the private workout, everything we've heard from him seems to be pointing towards Cam Ward being the next quarterback of the Tennessee Titans. And I have not seen anything to change. Now, like I said yesterday on Twitter, I would love to be wrong about this because that means it's the greatest smokescreen bit that has been ever played out in the history of bits.
I mean, they did catch Mike Borgonzi and Joe Shane having coffee together down in Palm Springs at the owners' meeting.
They did indeed do that today, so I guess that is worth monitoring. But I do think that at the end of the day, not much has changed with this one here. And I think Cam Ward is still the pick. Eddie saying, if I hadn't read the post, JT would have gotten my hopes up. Joe, Kenneth saying, boo. Drew saying, thought we were going to have to reignite the Ward-Sanders debate again for a second. Was not going to do any of that today. But, I couldn't help myself on April Fool's today. I do think it's, as Jake points out here, Borgonzi is scheming. I do think that plays into the other side of the bit in that he continues to say that we're open for business and that we're not necessarily maybe in on the pick. However, I think that's more playing into that bit, entertaining offers, showing that you're open. Exactly. And so, but at the end of the day, I still definitely think I definitely think that at the end of the day it's still Cam Ward, right?
I mean, from all of the information that we have at our disposal at this moment, it sure seems like all signs are pointing to Cam Ward, but I don't know, man. There's still that paranoid part of me, and maybe it's just my nature. Stone Cold Steve Austin, don't trust anybody, DTA. There's still in the back of my mind this little voice that's saying, hey, this is almost setting up too perfectly for the Titans to take Cam Ward. Now, the simplest explanation is they're just going to take Cam Ward, but there's still a part of me that's just like, oh, I don't know. We got to get, what is it, at this point, 3 more weeks, and then we'll know for sure. But based on the evidence we have at this moment, I think Cam Ward is the odds-on favorite to be the pick at 1.
Yeah, and Coach Wills says that the Brinker ESPN interview sounded like that they got their guy, they're set on him. However, once again, Mike Borgonzi, as Coach Wills says, always looks like he has something cooking, which I think is a fair sentiment. I've heard from a lot of Titans personnel and other executives that like Mike Borgonzi operates like as Eddie says, like a cyborg. Like no one truly knows what that guy is thinking. And now that he's in a GM role, I think that's taken to a next level. So like, could the smokescreen be an elaborate robotic ruse by Mike Borgonzi, leaving everyone in the dark, sending out all of his little pawns in the Tennessee Titans scape here to do the Cam Ward bidding just for them to trade down or take someone else? Maybe. And once again, like I would not be wrong. I would not be mad about that, right? Like I'd be wrong. I'd be fine with that because that is one of the most impressive performances I think I would have ever seen in my entire life. Like even after this year, like I don't think you could potentially top that. However,
don't underestimate the bull.
That this is true. And so maybe I am underestimating him, but I'm okay with that because I think for right now, for what we've heard from Brian Callahan specifically, it seems like that is the better fit with the upside over a guy like Shedeur Sanders. Jake saying Borgonzi about to be like Kevin Costner in draft day would be quite funny, but that can lead us to our next pick at 2.35. And Insp Callahan has a question saying, if Luther Burden were to fall to 35, would that be an option? And I get the feeling that like it's hard to say, right? Because if it were me making the pick, I would be all in from a talent perspective alone. Like the dude is worthy of being top 20 in this draft. We just don't know exactly how Mike Borgonzi, Callahan, and in this building may feel about those off the field issues, how much it truly impacts a locker room. And so I would be in on Luther Burden at 35.
Listen,
we just don't know.
I am not going to hold the offense concerns against Luther Burden III. If I had to play in that Missouri offense, first of all, it would look a lot different than it is, but I'd probably be a little ticked off too if I was a wide receiver in that offense. The only thing that I've heard the smoke screen through the Luther Burden III nonsense that's out there is that he's not a good practice player. I mean, that could potentially be concerning, but I don't know, man. Like if you just base it on the tape and the talent alone, I've got him as like the 11th overall player on my big board right now. I mean, he's really, really good prospect, really, really good talent. You do have to kind of sift through several reps. And I just wrote about this for stackingtheinbox.com too, about like Brew McCoy and the Vols offense is like, there's not a lot of gradable reps really out there. So you do have to kind of sift through to find something worthwhile, but the talent alone, this guy is wide receiver 2 behind Travis Hunter to me. And I like the talent enough that I wouldn't be upset if anybody were to pick him in the top 10. So if he falls to 35, I'm doing cartwheels, assuming the character concerns aren't that big of a deal. But from what we've heard, it's just like typical diva wide receiver bullshit. Like it's not, nobody's talking about, anything like criminal with Burden. So I don't know. And I still haven't seen any like real hard reporting on it. It's just been a lot of hearsay, almost like heard this from this scout, heard that from a different scout, that sort of thing. So until like something really concrete comes out, I'm going to stick with the tape. I'm going to stick with the talent. I'm going to base my evaluation off of that. And I'm going to say this guy would be an absolute steal at 35.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Derek brings up, wide receivers are supposed to be divas. You bring up, Eddie brings up D-Hop also had that rep as a bad practicer. Now, whether that was word of mouth from a guy like Bill O'Brien or the Cardinals to now, that can go either way, but that was out there. Jake saying he hopes Burden has the mental issues. He likes his receivers like he likes his women. A little crazy. Drew said as well. One scout said that the mom is a problem along with the girlfriend. Like there's so many things going around. But once again, like I agree with you. Like a lot of these things are just word of mouth. And there are some, things I've heard from league, guys in the league, in coaching rooms and whatnot, that there is something to that. However, the player is the player, right? And I think that's the biggest thing there. So for this one specifically, for this mock draft, I was under the assumption that Luther Burden, in fact, would not be there at 35. And so that kind of changes the math a little bit. And I was still wrestling with, okay, do you end up wanting to trade down here to pick up a third round pick somewhere in the mix there, or stick and pick? That's what we talked about a lot last week with some of these guys. And ultimately, what I came down with is that I did decide to trade down once again. This time trading down with the Seattle Seahawks. I was able to get the 50th overall pick, along with the 80th overall pick, in return for 35. And just to make sure that the pick would go through, I threw in a late 6th for him. I believe it was like 188, the last one. Now, to be honest, could you trade the 35 just for 50 and 80? I think so. But just to make it work, like, Joe, I understand that I probably got fleeced, but like, just to make sure that it would work, like I put that in there. However, I do think at the end of the day, like, if you wanted to trade back to 50, it's only going to take the 35th pick and pick up 80, I think, at the end of the day. And with that, I had the Tennessee Titans selecting Princely Umanmielen, the edge rusher out of Ole Miss, someone who we talked about on Friday. Once again, if you're trading back into the late 40s, early 50s, you're trading down into that next tier of guys who maybe don't have the super intriguing traits, but are guys who are probably at the end of the day going to be these startable edge rushers who are going to be quality players for you, right? And I think that's another way to look at it. Do you take the swing on 35, right? And you really need to know that guy is going to hit because you don't have another top 100 pick. Or do you move back and get two players who are going to be maybe not home runs from the get-go there, but can develop into quality starters? And I think that at the end of the day is still the biggest thing for me. Trading back and getting two guys who are going to be quality starters, maybe not, top tier guys from the start, but more so, can help this team next year as they build around Cam Ward, I think is more important. And so I have Princely Umanmielen. We talked a lot about him on Friday, 6'4", 244 pounds. He's on the older side. He'll be 23 when he comes in to play his first game in the NFL in 2025. But you talk about his 2024 season, it was his most productive, and he has gotten better and better every single year, which is what you want to see. 11 sacks in 2024. This is a guy, like we talked about on Friday, is one of the more raw players. And I think when you look at this mock draft here, you're going to see that at the edge position specifically, I decided to go with the guys who have shown the production, but also may be a little bit more raw in their pass rush moveset, in what they can do, because I think that is one of the more intriguing traits to have in this draft if you're the Tennessee Titans, right? Get a guy who has shown that he can do the production, maybe not against the greatest of talent, but if you're able to produce like that at an SEC level type school, and you still have an untapped, potential in a ceiling to rise to, I think that's worth it more than the production. And so you're getting the best of the both worlds here with Princely Umanmielen. And I think he's a guy that from day one, you can slot in with Arden Key and Draymond Jones and be a rotational three that is going to work a lot better and be a lot younger than what you had last year.
Yeah, I really like the way you phrase that, JT, because that's exactly what I was going to say. At 35, I think it might be a little too rich for my blood, but at this spot, it feels like a value that he's even still there. So you add him to a rotation where you can bring him along at a slower pace and develop him more. I think he is he flashes some really he has some really good reps. I think it's a consistency issue with him. There are times that he doesn't really look like his body's not in sync. I don't know that he's necessarily the smoothest mover. Like, I jotted down some notes about like plays that just kind of looked a little wonky to me. Throws a long arm, but then he stops his feet. So like the momentum dies. That's not good. Like the power move, you kind of want to drive the guy back. you got to iron that out. Drew brought it up in the chat, though. He has a nasty inside spin move. That is just, it's fun to watch. I love the way that he uses his shoulders to kind of sell and set up his bull rush. So, you move a certain way, the offensive tackle adjusts, and when they adjust, they're out of position, and you can just put your hands on him and walk him down, get his feet kind of out of whack a little bit. He does some savvy things like that, but it's just inconsistent to me. I thought Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon had some pretty good tape against him, was able to neutralize him. There are times at his anchor at the edge when he needs to be setting the edge, holding the point against the run, that he looks a little shaky. But I think there's a lot to work with right there, and especially at that value point of 50th overall. I have trouble finding anything to gripe about with that.
Yeah, I think it's a steal. And so, like, I think even if he wasn't there, if a guy like Landon Jackson was there as well, I think at the end of the day, a Braden Swinson, all three of those guys around here is a great home run pick for them to get the value that you're getting at 50. A guy who, like you said, I think attacking this edge room, considering where they are, unless you were going to get a James Pierce Jr. to fall to you at 35, right? Which, once again, I have a hard time believing that he does. I think there's a way that you should attack the edge rusher this year, and it's by making it a more of a rotation than it has been. And I think that way, by bringing a Landon Jackson, Braden Swinson, or in this case, Princely Umanmielen along by way of rotation, gets them maybe figuring things out, and maybe, like Kenneth said, disappearing in a few games. Like, maybe that doesn't happen as much. Joe says he isn't a top tier athlete. That's his biggest problem. Yeah, a little undersized, 6'4", 244, but still an 8.54 RAS score. So, ranked 264 out of 1,800 defensive edges, according to MathBomb and his RAS scores. So, I think he has enough to work with. And if you can work on some of those other different move sets in his toolbox, like, I think you have a guy who is going to make it to the next level as a starting every down edge rusher. And so he's one of my favorites in this class, in that mid 40s, 50s range. And I was ecstatic that I was able to get him there.
He's another horse for the stable kind of deal. And they need guys right now that, this is a guy that still has some experience going up against some pretty damn good tackles in the SEC. So no gripes about it. But I will say that a move you make later in this mock really makes this one feel a lot better to me. So
yeah, we can move on to the next one here. And so with that 80th pick that they pick up from trading back here in the draft, I decided to go wide receiver. And if you followed some of the things that have happened over the last couple of weeks, you know that some of our favorite wide receivers, just simply that we've been mocking to them in the fourths and whatnot early on post combine, are no longer looking like they are going to be there. And that's because it seems like the media has caught up to where the NFL boards are, where teams boards are. And in this case, I'm going with one of Cam's former teammates, Kyle Williams, here with the 80th overall pick. I know it says 76, but it's actually 80. 5'10", 190. We talked about him last Tuesday. This guy, to me, is the best press man beater in the entire class. Like, if you get him in a physical one-on-one at the line of scrimmage, this is a guy who is going to win 4.4 40, like everything you want in an athlete. Just once again, he just doesn't have the size and physicality that you want at the next level. And Kenneth says he won't make it there. Like, there is a real conversation to be had that guys like him and Jalen Knoll maybe go top 60.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think there's a real conversation to be had there. But I think if you want a guy who brings that upside of being the perfect slot fit for what Callahan needs in this offense right now, a guy who's going to find separation at the line of scrimmage and be able to beat press man better than any of the Titans wide receivers were able to last year, along with that the familiarity that he brings with Cam from his time at Washington State. in 2023, combined for 61 receptions on 85 targets for 842 yards and 6 scores. He also is a guy who, if you get him on screenplays, and he's someone who finds his way down the field, like he scored multiple touchdowns last year from off of screenplays. Like this is a guy, when you get the ball in his hands, good things happen. And I think that he is, he's one of the wide receivers that I'm keeping my eye on right now within the top 100, that if the Titans were to trade back into the later part of the day two, he's one of my favorite targets, especially with Cam Ward.
Well said, JT. Kyle Williams is like he's like my wife's boyfriend. Just when I'm coming home, he slips out the back door and gets away. That is Kyle Williams. I mean, the release package off the line to get around guys, the separation ability. This guy is a pure weapon. I don't know that he'll be there in the 80s at this point. Like his stock seems to be rising dramatically. Just a fantastic pick, a fantastic addition to this receiving course, just what they need.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that if you take a guy like Jalen Noel or in this case, Kyle Williams, I think it's more likely that you roll with just a one wide receiver class unless someone were to fall. He is undoubtedly like a home run pick once again if you're able to match him up with Cam in that year one, because I think that's like you said, Jake does bring up here, he's a liability in the run game, which isn't sexy, and we joke about it with the J-Rob regime, but it's going to make it hard for him to see the field. I don't necessarily know if that's exactly like when you look at Callahan's offense, right? Last year, Tyler Boyd wasn't exactly the run blocking guy that you want. Like once again, you don't have an NWI. I think they have their run blocking wide receiver in Bryce Oliver this upcoming year, because I think it's going, the hype train for him is about to leave the station. However, in this mock, I do only have one wide receiver going here, and it is Kyle Williams. So I think, it may not look the sexiest, but a wide receiver room of Calvin Ridley, Bryce Oliver, Van Jefferson, Kyle Williams. Like, I think that along with, a Chigakonkwo, Josh Wiley, your running backs, I think that's a solid start to a offensive core that can thrive and grow within the next couple of years.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a unit that just, it needs speed. It's somehow, and you don't have the picks at the top of this draft to get it all, to cross everything off your wish list with the first couple of rounds. So you got to have to kind of take some chances. And at this point, like, I get it. You're going to have to take a guy that probably has a question mark or two, but I feel like the speed injection into the pass game, the option, the weapon for Cam Ward at this point is worth the subpar run blocking. Yeah,
I agree with you there. Derek says, when are fan tryouts for receiver? I think that's something we'll be talking about all summer, depending on how this draft goes. And I think there are guys who in UD that are going to be UDFAs that are speed guys that could be intriguing options as well. A certain one we won't talk about that potentially could be there late in round 6 or 7, I think could also be an interesting one that the Titans could go grab. However, I do think at the end of the day, Kyle Williams is one of my favorites here. And it's hard to say, like, at this point, if they were to trade into the mid to late 80s, I don't know if they're going to be there, but we can hope. And that's what I'm doing here in my mock draft 2.0, which leads me to the first pick of round 4 on day 3. The Titans are going to be able to pick whoever they want out of the rest of the players starting on day 3. And I have them double dipping at the edge position with a guy who made it onto my mock draft 1.0. And he was someone who I took later in that mock that I've now moved all the way up to the first pick of the 3rd or the 4th round here. And that, of course, is Femi Oladejo, the edge rusher out of UCLA. This is a guy who, the more and more I watch him, the more and more I learn about him. He's a guy I simply cannot quit He's only a 1-year starter at the edge position, but 7 sacks, 7 hurries, 19 pressures overall. He's a guy that in his first season is one of the guys with the most upside, I think, in this class. He has the versatility from the get-go at the position, being a former middle linebacker with a 9.3% run stop rate. Someone who's going to be able to set the edge. And just like Princely Umanmielen, if you get him in a rotation, those 4, like a Umanmielen, a Draymond Jones, a Arden Key, and an Oladejo, like that is the type of structure and I think the blueprint that the Titans may want to target here in this draft. Guys who have the ability and the production in their last year of college to get it, be suitable from the start, be consistent from the start, but have the upside to get, become those 3 down players. And he is one of the guys who has had a 30 visit with the Titans. And once again, another guy who I think right now potentially could be one of the shocking guys of the draft that ends up going top 60. However, I'm holding my breath because, like Joe says, there is some injury concerns, and how Mike Borgonzi sees that for draftable players specifically is something that we still need to find out, and we'll only learn once we get to draft night. However, double dipping at the edge position, I think, is of utmost priority for the Tennessee Titans. And if they were to get a guy like Princely Umanmielen and then another guy like Femi Oladejo, 2 guys who have maybe untapped ceilings, I think would be a home run for the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Oladejo, I'm sure you're not going to draft him and look at him like this, but for the purposes of this exercise, just looking at the mock draft, Oladejo to me is a little bit of insurance if you can't tap into Umanmielen's skill set and make him more. Best case scenario, you've got 2 new horses for the stable. You roll the dice on a guy early, but you have a little bit of a backup plan later on. I'm with the chat. Like, I don't think Oladejo is going to be there this late. His draft stock is really rising. I think he could be one of the guys that could be a surprise early pick as well, because what he does is just so valuable in the NFL. Like, this guy is a pure pass rusher, long, twitchy, persistent, got a little bit of experience at linebacker to boot. My issues with him, it seems like there's an element of finish that's missing from his game. Like, he hits with that initial wave like a battering ram, but there are times like it's almost like he doesn't know what to do with his hands to like sustain, to hand fight a little bit, to counter consistently. There are elements that it's kind of like, okay, you see this guy's kind of still learning to be an edge rusher. I like the history at linebacker. I think it shows up when they drop him to defend the hook flat, that sort of thing. Like, he's pretty decent in coverage. It's just like the power, kind of the persistence, like those are issues, like developing a plan B sort of thing. But man, he'll throw any move in the book at you. Really twitchy, speedy guy, a lot of fun to watch. He just gets out there and gets after the quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely agree with everything you said. And I think that's the knock, right? Some of the things still need to be developed, but once again, to have that kind of production with only 1 year under your belt after being a transplant from the middle linebacker position, I think is something that cannot be overstated. His ability to be versatile in the run game as well is one of my favorite qualities. So with the top 4 picks, the Titans get and whether it is these players or not, if the Titans were to go quarterback, trade down, and then an edge, wide receiver, and with their 4th round pick, another edge or wide receiver, like that is like a great start. And honestly, what I think they need to do, I think they need to, with 4 picks, take a quarterback and 3 edges or wide receivers and double dip at either edge or wide receiver. I think that's almost what you have to do.
Yeah.
Anything outside of that, I think I could be convinced, right? Like, I could be convinced on a tight end. I could be convinced on a running back. Could be convinced on a safety. Outside of that, like, but at the end of the day, what they need, maybe even a middle linebacker But at
Yeah.
those premium positions, edge and wide receiver, I think they have to double dip with one of their first 4 picks there, right?
I'm feeling pretty good about the selection so far. I think we've improved the Titans, or you've
Yeah.
improved the Titans. This is not my mock, so.
Yeah, I think so too. Even if it isn't these, like the blueprint is there for them. So at Tennessee, I think that's what you need to go with: a quarterback, trade back, edge, wide receiver, and then an edge/wide receiver with the first pick in the 4th round. Before we get to the last 4 picks, have to shout out our wonderful presenting sponsor, M.L.Rose. 7 locations in the greater Nashville area, including Capitol View, Franklin, Gallatin, Melrose 8th Avenue, Mount Juliet, Sylvan Park, and an 8th location coming soon to Inglewood near East Nashville. Got to get out there soon if you have not been in a while, because they simply have the best beer and food selection in Nashville. Over 25 beers on tap. I'm interested. I have not seen anything today, Stoney, about their new burger of the month. I don't know what it is yet. If you weren't able to get the stout burger, I'm sorry, it's gone. There's a new burger in town. Have not seen it yet. Probably will come back with a special report on Friday to see what that is. I'll probably have had it since then. Excited to see what it is, but have the best selection of appetizers, snacks, food, and of course their craft burgers. Got to check them out. Tell them the Hot Read Podcast sent you. Also, may have something with the draft in the works with them for that Friday. So keep updated on that. I'll let you guys know. But thank you to M.L.Rose for sponsoring the show. Okay, Stoney. Kenneth said, do you consider a running back here? I don't think they are sold on Spears and need a power back. I agree with them. I do not have them taking a running back here, but I may have them taking a running back later on in this draft because, once again, just as the board fell to me, too good to pass up, but I elected with the other 4th-round pick the Titans had here to go with their guard of the future post Kevin Zeitler. And to me, that is Jalen Rivers, an offensive tackle / guard out of Miami. Get some more familiarity in the building for Cam Ward, another former teammate that he played with just last year. He's one of the best guys, in my opinion, in this draft class that falls into that Bill Callahan zone, right? He has the size and also the arm length to boot with him. 35-inch arms, former 4-star, has the potential to play tackle at the next level, but I think he lacks a lot in athleticism, but makes up for it in his anchor, in that arm reach, able to trap edge rushers where they're standing. Like you said on whenever we did that show, built like a bus. This dude is a freak of nature, and I think there's no question that if you bring in a guy like Jalen Rivers, not only does he give you that versatility to fill in if you needed desperately in 2025, but I think at the end of the day, where he belongs at the next level is at guard. He did play some guard at Miami, only about a little over 60 or 55 to 60% of his snaps in 2024 were at left tackle, played some left guard. I think you get him to sit behind a guy like Kevin Zeitler for a year, and you have a starting right guard for the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, I like Jalen Rivers quite a bit. Versatile lineman, like you said. He's got some really good tackle tape, but you do see kind of some limitations playing in space at the edge. You factor in the uptick in competition. He's going to be taking on NFL pass rushers at the next level. It does worry you a little bit, and that's why I think the common projection for him is at guard. But like as an emergency tackle, it's like we've talked about all offseason, JT. It's like this team has needs everywhere. So let's not act like they couldn't also use like some emergency tackle depth. So it would be a good way to check that box. But this guy could be your heir apparent to Kevin Zeitler. My comp for Jalen Rivers was a wooden doorstop. Like you just get him wedged in there and it's not moving back anymore. Okay. Like it was so fun to watch his tape and see him, just the way he kind of drops and just doesn't move back very often. He's a really strong, powerful offensive lineman that I think you hit the nail on the head. This has Bill Callahan written all over it.
Coach Will says, "Don't worry, Stoney. NPF never dies. They still have NPF on the roster, and it sounds like after the GM or owner meetings, they are keeping him on the roster to compete. Which, don't worry, they have their tackle depth. It's called NPF because he is like a cockroach. He never dies.
I think NPF is going to be guard depth. That's my hot take.
I like that one. I think we've talked about that before on the show, but with one of their picks here, as Hurricane Lou says, please no. Appreciate you guys being here in the comments as well as we continue with this mock. I think it's also important in the fourth. You have guys like Jalen Rivers, Miles Frazier, maybe even if Wyatt Milam falls there into the early day 3. Like, this is another place where if you're not looking Jalen Rivers, I think it's a really good target to get that guard depth of the future, to build past potentially Kevin Zeitler. Now, could Kevin Zeitler just be this guy you churn until he's 38, 39? Sure. But I think when you're looking down the line, I think it's important to spend a top 120 pick on a guard. And I think that comes by way of the 4th round, which then leads us to the 5th and 6th round. And this is where we're going to get a little weird, because I've gotten a couple questions across the past couple of days saying ideas on tight ends. I think the Titans could use one of these guys, a playmaking guy, someone in this deep class who is going to be that playmaker for Cam Ward, be able to find space and be yet another weapon for the Tennessee Titans. And my answer to that is I think it's almost the exact opposite. It's no secret that the Titans have been sniffing around the tight end market here in the 2025 NFL Draft. However, I think they're not looking at the shiny items. I think they're looking at the guys that they can just throw out there and be junkyard dogs on the offensive line and 12 personnel and as inline blockers. We saw how much Brian Callahan used Nick Vannett and Josh Wiley last year as inline blockers, even using John Ojukwu as an inline blocker, that extra lineman. And so with the
chat's guys. Off the rails.
They're off the rails. That was a good one. However, with their first 5th round pick, and this might be paying a little bit of a premium, but I think he simply is the best inline blocker and Y tight end in this class. I have the Titans selecting Jackson Hawes from Georgia Tech here.
Yeah, buddy.
This is a guy that 6'4", 253 pounds, has simply the best anchor as a inline blocker of any of these tight ends in the class. He mauls opponents at the line of scrimmage. That shows up evidently on his tape, and he embodies everything you could want in an old school type of tight end. He by no means is going to be a playmaker. He has a 12.3% career drop rate, doesn't flash a lot in terms of being able to catch the ball and make plays. However, the Titans seem to be shaking hands, wishing a guy like Nick Vannett on his merry way, which leaves a big kind of need. It's not a sexy need, right? But it's a need that they need to fill in this draft. And I think that's where a guy like Jackson Hawes could absolutely just fill in here and become this dependable inline blocker for Brian Callahan's offensive line and his 12 personnel that he loves to run at the offensive line. And so if you need anything more to know about Jackson Hawes, you just have to listen to what he said about his ability as a blocker at the NFL Combine. He said, "I'm looking to punish people. I'm looking to put my face mask under someone's chin." And I think that's, represents everything Jackson Hawes stands for. He's the guy that they have guys like DMR. I understand that they have guys like Thomas Odukoya. But this guy, when it comes to being an inline Y-type tight end, is a premium at that type of position. And I think he's well worth the 141st pick.
Yeah, he's a really old school player. I mean, they don't make him like this anymore. I love watching Jackson Hawes. I think his his mock draftables probably look something like Trent Williams, Mike Allstott, and The Undertaker or something like that. Like he's awesome, man. Drew said it. He hates defensive players. Like I love that is his thing. You know, people are like, well, you know, you're lacking as a pass catcher, and it's just I don't care. I want to go out there and I want to hurt people. And I think there is a misconception sometimes from the bigger picture when we look at Brian Callahan's offense and when we say, well, this is a modern offense. And I think it's what makes it one of the things that makes it an interesting offense is that, yes, like the passing game, the passing concepts are modern, quick game, interesting stuff. It's the fireworks show stuff that you want to see and all that. That's all well and good. But when you look at the run game, it's still kind of predicated on running with power, displacing people, opening up lanes, blowing through defensive lines, and creating a lane for the running back. Now, the thing with Jackson Hawes is maybe he's not going to be the guy that's sprinting downfield 40 yards and hauling in touchdowns, but he is going to help ignite that run game. So you're getting a little heavier, a little younger at that position. He's not going to come here to be the smoke and mirrors tight end that's doing all kinds of stuff just to catch a pass. He's going to be a guy that lines up, that hits somebody, that they can use to pull when they run counter, where they send the tight end across the formation to kick out the end man at the line of scrimmage. He can do that. He can wrap and get upfield and block people. Like, this is effectively like having a sixth offensive lineman on the field. And like you alluded to, JT, that doesn't sound necessarily sexy, but I think we lose sight of the fact sometimes that this team still wants to run the ball physically with power, and he enhances your ability to do that. It's a pick that makes a lot of sense to me.
Absolutely. He's a necessity for this team. And whether they draft a guy like Jackson Hawes in the draft or they end up reuniting with someone like Nick Vannett, it's an inevitability, I think, at this point in the offseason, which then leads us to their second of 2 fifth-round picks. And this one I went with just because there has been a connection, and I do think it's someone the Titans are keeping tabs on. And it may not be a position of need necessarily, but I do think, once again, in the words of our friend James Foster, you can always do well by taking a cornerback in the NFL draft. And so I have the Tennessee Titans taking Robert Longerbeam. Don't know why it says wide receiver. Ignore that. He's a cornerback from Rutgers with their other fifth round pick here. Longerbeam, 5'11", 175, ran speedy dude. This is a guy who has the speed to follow receivers down the field. 4.39 40. Is a guy who also is known for being able to force incompletions, had an 18.2% forced incompletion rate in 2024 with 10 forced completions. He also, the biggest knock on him, right, is that 20.4% missed tackle rate in 2024. He has trouble bringing guys down, but 42 career pass breakups. He's competitive. He's a guy who, get him in press man. That's where he thrives. He sounds exactly like a guy that Denard Wilson has a special place in his heart with. They had a pre-draft meeting with him as well. So he's a guy that the Titans are keeping tabs on. 6.76 3-cone drill time. He is elusive. He's able to move with the best of them. He may not be the best tackler or be, the best type of cornerback in zone play, but it's okay because that's not really exactly what the Titans like to play. So he's a guy in the fifth there that I really do like.
I like him quite a bit too, and now I'm finishing him up today. I haven't my notes aren't complete on him, but what I've seen so far, good speed, good twitch, the ability to mirror guys off the line of scrimmage. I like that he kind of establishes a contact point. They moved him into the slot on a couple of reps, and he kind of got that hand out there to track where the receiver was going. He throws a jab, gets a little physical with the shoulders. I like him. I think he's got a pretty good complete game to be such a late round projected guy. Like I don't feel like there are as many guys as polished as he is at this stage in the draft, but absolutely has the technique to mirror. he does look lighter. The frame shows up in tackling. One of the notes that I wrote down watching the UCLA game, bless his heart, trying to cross the field and tackle Maliki Matavao, the big tight end at UCLA that is essentially a stack of cinder blocks that can run. He just like crosses the field and just runs into him as hard as he can. And I don't think Mataveo even budges, and Longer Beam just bounces off of him. It's one of the funniest plays I've watched this draft cycle. That's the concern with him. But from a pure coverage standpoint, really, really good player that I think people are kind of sleeping on in the depth portion of this cornerback class.
Yeah, either him or another guy we've talked about a little bit, Quincy Riley, former teammate of Jarvis
Quincy
Brownlee
Riley.
Jr. The two guys who I think in that sixth round, like those are guys they could potentially be targeting because I think they are a Denard Wilson fit. Drew also says, I actually like Longer Beam a good bit. One of the very few depth corners that are actually going to be able to stay on the boundary in this class. And even though it's not necessarily a need, there is a hole that opens up when you release Chidobe Awuzie, right? I mean, there is, no reason to not believe that they could add a guy in the draft and with one of these picks here. And so I have them doing it here with their second pick in the 5th, which leaves us with one more pick. And I know Kenneth was asking about what about the running back position? And this is certainly a deep class. Now, could they want to really bargain bin with some of these late round gems here and go with a guy that's a UDFA potentially? But if a guy like Ollie Gordon is there in the 6th round, I think it's a no-brainer that you take him. 6'1", 226 pounds. This dude is one of the biggest bullies of a running back in this draft class. And what are the Titans specifically looking for in this draft class? I think is one of those bigger body running backs that is not going to be necessarily as elusive as a Tyjae Spears or maybe have the vision of a Tony Pollard, but someone that the Titans may have not had last year, which is a guy that you can give the ball to and know that he's going to get 4 yards. He's going to get 3 to 4 yards on the carry because this is a guy who's going to churn those legs and he's going to take defenders with him. And that's exactly what the Titans are missing here. Had 189 carries for 854 yards, 4.5 yards per attempt, 12 rushing touchdowns. But this is where I think a guy like Ollie Gordon also gives you the upside. He's a great pass blocker. He's that guy that's going to bully defensive linemen, getting those 3 to 4 yards regardless. But also, he's pretty dependable out of the backfield.
Yeah.
Caught 30 balls on 38 targets last year for 198 yards and had 0 drops. So this is a guy that has the hands to play at the next level. He is a bully when you get the ball in his hands and is a great pass blocker. All 3 things I think Brian Callahan really wants in a running back this year. I also don't think that they're really set on a guy like Tyjae Spears. The injury concerns are still there. Tony Pollard is not getting any younger. This is a guy who I think can be that bruiser 3-down back if you want. Sure, he's not as athletic as a Tony Pollard. He doesn't have the vision of a Tony Pollard. He certainly is not as elusive as a guy like Tyjae Spears, but he's a guy that I think you just give him the ball and he's going to find his way downfield by just being as physical and as powerful as he is. So I love a guy like Ollie Gordon on day 3, regardless of where they would take him.
Yeah, I like Ollie Gordon as well. I think the at 6'1", like he's bordering on almost like too long for the running back position. Like there are times that I feel like I watched him and would be like, man, just get your pads down just a little bit. And maybe the balance isn't going to be as wobbly in those scenarios. But I do think he is the kind of missing piece for this backfield. I think he runs with a lot of power. Like you said, I think he's dependable. And at this stage in the draft, the value to me is much greater to fill that role in your offense than what it's going to cost to get a Caleb Johnson, which we've heard that they had for a 30 visit. So like to me, that's the better course of action to take. Don't overspend for a guy like this when there are a few of them sitting around at the in the 6th and the 7th round of this draft, and Ollie Gordon's one of them.
Yeah. So to recap, with my entire mock draft 2.0 here, which I will bring up for you guys, the whole rundown, and we can talk about it as a whole. To recap, mock draft 2.0. The Titans take Cam Ward at 1, getting their franchise guy. Trade back in the top of the 2nd for an extra top 100 pick, selecting needs at edge and wide receiver with Princely Umanmielen and Ward's former teammate Kyle Williams. Tennessee doubles up on the edge position in the 4th round with Femi Oladejo, takes their future starting guard in Jalen Rivers to sit behind Zeitler at 120. Callahan finds his Y inline blocker stud in Jackson Hawes in the 5th. They add cornerback depth with Robert Longerbeam in the 5th as well, and get a thumper of a running back in Ollie Gordon in the 6th. And that, my friends, is my mock draft 2.0.
Well done.
Yes.
There you go.
And Joe says, who plays punt returner? LeJounte Wester, UDFA. That's my pick there. There you go.
There we go.
Potential UDFA there. So I think, once again, not my final mock. Going to have to really think about where these guys go and who the most realistic guys to go are. Because, once again, like a lot of people said, maybe a guy like Oladejo, Umanmielen, Williams are not going to be there at those picks. And so I think that's where, these are guys we want to talk about because they're guys that we like, we think would be good fits for the Titans. Are they a little bit unrealistic? Potentially. However, I do think that it is guys that could be on their radar. And so we did also put out today, we're running a little bit long, but that's okay. Love talking ball with you guys as always. We did ask you guys for if you had any questions you wanted to talk about, just Titans or draft related, to drop them on Twitter. And we thank you guys for doing that. And so we're going to go through a couple of those before we get out of here. Reminder, if you are just joining us and weren't here earlier in the show, we have links to our Thursday draft party with Sinkers at their HQ in Wedgwood, Houston, along with our Saturday Titans NFL draft recap off the record podcast with myself and the rest of the 440 Sports Network, including Paul Karski, Nick Suss, Stoney, Braden, 5 Flight bourbon tasting catered by Shotgun Willie's. Check the links in the description to get your tickets to that. All of it goes to our kids' charity. So support a good cause. Come out, watch the Titans. We'll get to some of these questions here. And we have Jake with his first question asking, afternoon, fellas. I think it's just that time of draft cycles, but is it out of this world that all the stuff, the Ward stuff, is pure fluff? We love Sanders and honestly just want the trade to 3 and a boatload. Could potentially be. We talked about that a little bit earlier with Mike Borgonzi, the cyborg, keeping it close to the vest. I listen, I would not be mad, right? Like, fool me once, shame on me. We'll see next year, fool me twice. However, like, that would be awesome for the Titans, just from a content perspective, because I would eat it up. I would absolutely eat it up, and this town would burn, and I would enjoy watching it.
Yeah. I think some good life advice in general is to just be prepared for anything.
Yes, I agree with you there. The General asks, if you are an NFL GM, what's the bigger risk? Picking the next franchise quarterback at 1 and he busts, not picking the next franchise quarterback at 1 and he's great? Interesting. I think it depends on the owner. And in this scenario, like, if you pick the next franchise quarterback at 1 and he busts, like, you're going to lose your job, but like, you did what you were supposed to do, right? Like, you took your guy you believed in. It didn't work out. You lose your job. That's what happens. Easton Freeze over at A to Z wrote a great article on how many times that really has happened, whether as a GM or a coach. You take a rookie quarterback, you get axed the next year, like, and because he wasn't the savior immediately. However, for the Titans, not picking the next franchise quarterback 1 and he's great, how does that look to someone like Amy Adams Strunk, which we know she's watching things as well. Like, I don't know. I think the bigger risk is not, I think at the end of the day, it's not picking the next franchise quarterback at 1 and he's great, right? I think if you're there like the Titans are, and if they are as enamored with a guy like Cam Ward as they seem to be, and as we think they are, like, I think that's the bigger risk. You know, we see it all the time. People take their quarterback at 1, he busts. They take him in top 5, he busts. Like, that's something that teams you have to do, right?
Yeah. I'm on the opposite side of this one from you, because I think, in a way, if you draft the quarterback and he busts, you're still pushing all your chips to the table on that quarterback. And so if the quarterback busts, then likely your team's not very good and you're having to start over from scratch and you're fired. That is kind of a certainty to me. I think there is at least a way out if you don't draft the quarterback and you still improve your team
Yeah.
and you're okay, right? Um, Even though that quarterback may go on to do better things elsewhere. And again, the context here being the owner, it's a very good point that it depends on the temperament of the owner, the person making the decisions. But you could at least feel a little bit better that, hey, we made the team because we took the premium pass rusher or we took the elite wide receiver and eventually we got quarterback right, even though, Patrick Mahomes or Cam Ward went on to become Patrick Mahomes somewhere else. I think that at least provides a little bit of wiggle room. Like you can at least justify like, yeah, but we helped the team more. So I think it's riskier to go with the quarterback myself. I would use the Chicago Bears as an example of this because Patrick Mahomes was a popular
Yeah.
example of this where
Yep.
they drafted Mitchell Trubisky and they've been kind of made fun of ever since then for not taking Patrick Mahomes. But if you look at like the following year, the Bears made the playoffs. Like they got better, and I know ultimately it went down in a blaze of glory and all that for Matt Nagy, but I think you can still make your team better, and that at least gives you a way out. But if you push all your chips into the table on the quarterback and he busts, that is 100% certainty your ass is grass. You're gone.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
tossed out the club. Fun's over.
I think that's very fair. I two different perspectives also I think are both fair. Kenneth asks, let's assume Cam Ward is the pick. What is one thing you need to see from him in year one to make it worth it? No cheating and saying multiple things, pick one. Is it a playoff push, comeback wins, consistency, elevating those around him, or something else? I think this is a really good question. And for me, because once again, we've been on here saying that he's not the perfect prospect. There are things that he needs to improve. For me, it's playing in structure. And when you are playing in structure, it's being able to be confident in that structure. His pocket presence and sack avoidance has always been a problem. It always shows up on his tape, much like Shedeur Sanders, but maybe not as much. I mean, a 20.1% career pressure to sack rate, because like Joe says, those things, when you're not able to be comfortable, those are what lead to mistakes and turnovers. And so for me,
Mhm.
I think it would be looking more comfortable in the pocket presence and being more consistent.
Yeah, I it's pretty simple for me too. I mean, just eliminate the turnover worthy plays.
Yeah, I
Show that
agree. Yeah.
yeah, just show that that is something that is correctable. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, it's not like he's not going to make mistakes. Like I'm saying, "Oh, don't make a single mistake your entire rookie year and we're good." But just show that that's not a tendency and show a little bit of growth that you're getting better at that. That's all I need by the end of the
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, that's fair. I think you want to see the right. He's improved from high school. He improved
Mhm.
from Incarnate Ward. He improved from Washington State. He improved at Miami. You need to see that improvement again, because that's the track he was on. Right? He was not a top 6 quarterback. He declared for the draft last year, and his advisor said, "You're no better than a day 3 guy. Go back to school." He did. Now
Yep.
he's looking like he's the number 1 overall pick. You want to see him take another step after that and not just be where he is. Joe says basically don't be Will Levis at all. That is super fair as well. Another question from Daniel Moat saying, I know that Skoronski added significant weight when moving from offensive tackle to guard, and Latham supposedly plays heavier than his combine weight. With the additions of big dudes Zeitler and Moore, could this starting O-line give some competition to the Eagles for the heaviest O-line in the NFL? And Stoney, I heard that you brought up some numbers for this question.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting, right? Because it's something we've talked about a lot with the addition of Bill Callahan, coordinating the run game, adding offensive linemen. It feels like there was a shift from more zone to more gap, more smaller athletic guys to bulkier guys, and I kind of wanted to track where that trend was going. And so I dug into the numbers a little bit. Looking at the offensive line of the Eagles, they weigh a collective 1,635 pounds. That's an average of 327 pounds per offensive lineman. That's a big offensive line. Skewed pretty well by, I would say, Jordan Mailata weighing 366 pounds. I had to like double check that a couple of times. Like that can't be right, but it is. Now the Titans have their own hoss, JC Latham, no slouch at 342 pounds. He's a big old boy. They are currently sitting at, this is presuming Dan Moore at left tackle, Kevin Zeitler at right guard, 1,602 pounds. So they are 7 pounds lighter per offensive lineman than the Philadelphia Eagles. But if you factor NPF and you factor Dylan Radins into the equation, that number goes down to 317.8 for the Titans last year. The NFL average is 315 per offensive lineman. So last year, with the addition of JC Latham, they got bulkier. They actually went above that number. And then with Dylan Radins, who is 13 pounds lighter than Kevin Zeitler at 302 pounds. I never realized how light Radins was as a guard. And when I saw that, the light bulb kind of went off as to why they let him walk in free agency. I was like, oh yeah, he's out of here. He's cooked. So adding Kevin Zeitler adds 13 pounds. They go from 317.8 to 320 average per offensive lineman. Yes, that is above average in the NFL, and that is a step closer to closing the gap against the Philadelphia Eagles as one of the heaviest offensive lines in the NFL.
I love it. Let's do some free fire ones, and we can't get to all of these, so we'll save them for another day. But Absolute Airfield says, if Burden, Golden, and Tet are gone at 35 and you have to take a wide receiver, who are you taking? For me, I think it's Alec Ayumanor.
Oh, I'm going Emeka Egbuka if he's still there.
Oh, true. That's fair.
But
it was also thinking like if he's like I was just assuming he was gone.
He's
but yes,
gone.
okay.
Yeah. I'm
going there. I'm with you.
I'm going Egbuka, Jack Besh, Alec Ayumanor.
Yeah, I like it. Brian says, which late centers do you like? Big bold move for me. Just take Clay Webb and make him a center.
Boom.
It's fine. Willie Lampkin.
I'm going Willie Lampkin, and I don't
go.
care that he's small. He is a bear trap. He is a spark plug. Going to make everybody else on your team practice a little bit harder too.
Yeah, I love it. Kenneth says Jake Majors in the chat there as well. And then our final question comes from Eldon English, and he says, ask Stoney if turtles are actually nature's D's student, as Stewie Griffin from Family Guy suggests.
I'm not going to answer it. We've been working this bit in the Sobros mailbag for I think 5 years now, and I've just thought, no, it's better to commit to the bit than it is to actually address it. So I'm going to keep it going.
All right. Well, I love it. That's going to do it for the Hot Read podcast today. Thank you to M.L.Rose and Sinkers Beverages for sponsoring the show as always. Once again, find a location near you at www.mlrose.com. Strike says, damn you, Stoney. He thought we were going to get it today, but we do not. Once again, if you want to join us for our live NFL draft coverage at Sinkers Beverages headquarters in Wedgwood, Houston, either on Thursday, catered by Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, or the Saturday one catered by Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, the off-the-record full Q&A with us post-Titans draft, along with a 5-flight bourbon tasting. All the proceeds go to the Our Kids Foundation, goes to charity. Great cause. Check out the links below. If you buy both tickets together, you get a $10 discount. It's $70 for 2 nights of NFL draft talk, food, and great drinks. Hope to see you guys there. And until Friday's show, this has been the Hot Read podcast. We will talk to you then. Have a good week.